1, 2, 3, 4. I gave you all I had to give, and I've done the best I can. So now it's up to you to finish what I began. Yes, I will always love you, and I'll be there just for you. So in all that you do, my child, to yourself you must be true. So promise me that you will fight for what it is that you believe. No matter what you do in life, it's in the giving that you'll receive. Wherever the road may take you, those you meet along the way, promise me that you will count your blessings every day.
And a good day or a good morning, good evening to you. Jason Hawes here on American Faith Today, and miracles of miracles. Everything we see is one big gigantic miracle, with the biggest one being that, yes, I am doing a podcast. It has been, 30, 40 years since I last did a podcast? No, that's especially when we talk 40 years, that's almost my entire life on this earth. But I think even 30 years ago, I don't think we were quite to the point yet in which Al Gore had invented the internet. Yes, Al Gore, who gave us the greatness that is the internet and the greatness that is stranded polar bears and global warming. But in all seriousness, it is good to be doing a podcast. And you know what? Because quite frankly, I enjoy doing them. And they have been too few and far between. And many times I am taking subtle and not so subtle digs at myself, as self-deprecating humor is a very close personal friend of mine, and it's probably a friendship that will not end anytime soon. But and many times I find myself apologizing as well for the time that has lapsed between podcasts, and there has been quite a bit of time, I believe, since not 30, 40 years, but I'd have to go back and check to see when I did the last one. But life happens sometimes, and when life happens, you have to take care of other things, and even now, there's things that I prioritize or want to prioritize, and even maybe could be prioritizing even as I am rambling and talking to you right now. But like I said, there's also a lot naturally that's going on in the world, in the country, in our country, and in the world around us. And I was almost, I was almost going to do one actually last night. Not that as this is going to be recorded, as it says here on Spreaker, recorded offline and kind of pre-recorded and sent out and promoted and published later. So the time or the date that I am speaking is really not all that relevant to any of you at this point. But I was going to do one last night, and just did not, in my work schedule and everything too, I need to, even if there's a subject that strikes my interest or that I think is very important, I still need to find time to study some articles and study some whatever the source may be, whether it's a news piece or somebody's editorial or opinion piece or whatever. Again, whatever the case may be, and I just did not have the time or could not find the time to adequately do show prep to do the show that I actually had in mind last night. So I'm doing a totally different show and a totally different subject this evening. Although I will say, because it was very interesting, and what I was going to do, and this is certainly something that's going to that we need to keep an eye on. I think especially when we talk internet censorship. And again, you'll have to bear with me because this has nothing to do with the actual planned show topic and subject for tonight, for this particular podcast. This was going to be a show. Maybe at some point in the future it will be a show again if more news hits along these lines. But what piqued my interest and what caught my attention actually last night, and again, I was going to go into internet censorship maybe as a whole, but there was a news story that came across through various outlets. I think I first saw it, and again, I look at so many things so quickly during the course of a day that many times, unless I actually take the time to back up, click on something, read it, the source even escapes me, or I don't pay a lot of attention. I glance at a lot of headlines maybe during the day. But I saw, and I posted actually on the American Faith Today Facebook page and my personal timeline, and somewhere else as well, a group that one of the Facebook groups that I don't spend a lot of time in, but I posted it there. It was a Christian prophecy and current events group. But Russia, who of course is in the news quite often, and is quite central to coming prophecy as well as far as that goes, but Russia has apparently decided, and they're actually have taken a vote to sometime between now and April 1st, April Fool's Day actually, they are going to unplug from the internet, from the World Wide Web. And they're not sure exactly how this is going to work out for them. And seemingly they're only going to be unplugged for about half an hour. The narrative they're using is that it's to prepare or protect themselves in the event that they would ever get actually knocked off, disconnected, basically completely knocked off the World Wide Web through a cyber attack, with news that the United States, that we were maybe going to hit them with some kind of cyber attack. The concern, though, is that they're actually trying to set up something that would be like a very heavily censored internet like they have in China with, I believe they call it their Great Firewall, or North Korea. And they already do censor. Of course, it is Russia. It's not the Soviet Union, but there's still some remnants and aspects of it that have never completely gone away. And they do censor their internet. I don't want to come across as an expert on that, but they do censor their internet to some extent. Some websites that they simply either will not allow to be accessed, or that they try to keep from being accessed. And they have kind of recruited some of the tech giants and social media companies like Google. There's some news as well that Google is now playing ball with Russia, and they actually are, after at one point fighting back or refusing, and Russia actually fired. Russia actually fined Google, and now Google is allegedly doing their part to try to blacklist some of the websites and links and so forth that Russia wants blacklisted. But it's a very serious thing. And again, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it because I got, other stories to get to and a whole other subject. But it is a very serious thing when we talk about internet censorship. I'll say, by the way, I don't know. I think we all know that Google isn't exactly our friend, but I saw something very interesting, and you hear about censorship of conservatives or Christians or what have you, and look, I'm not saying with my small potatoes outfit that I was a target or became known to Google, although, at the same time, who knows? And I don't know how their algorithm works, but it was very interesting when doing a Google search. If I put in American Faith Today into Google, nothing comes up. And when I say nothing comes up, if it comes up at all, it's buried. I mean, not on the first page, not on the second page, not on the third, fourth, fifth, sixth page, I believe, however far I went. And again, hey, look, I'm small potatoes, so if I'm not on page 1 of Google, I don't necessarily sweat that or consider that any type of censorship or them trying to silence me or hide me from the public's view. But it is interesting that at the same time, if I go to DuckDuckGo, which is allegedly anyway a private web browser where they don't track you, they don't, you're not going to get, in theory, an ad for something or a link to some page because you were looking at something of that variety. But if I put in American Faith Today on DuckDuckGo, it comes up as the first hit. And actually, what comes up as the first hit, or what came up in the first hit, was even American Faith Today on Blog Talk Radio, which I'm not on Blog Talk Radio anymore. And the second hit, I believe, was my Facebook page. And even Bing, same thing. I put in American Faith Today, and I believe the same first two hits were American Faith Today on Blog Talk Radio and American Faith Today on Facebook. So it is curious, without a doubt, that would not come up at all on Google, but it comes up quite readily on the other sites. Like I said, I don't know what their algorithm is. I don't know how it's set up, but I certainly, it would be in one sense unwise to say, without any evidence other than that they're trying to hide me from web searches, hide this Facebook page or program from web searches. At the same time, it would be unwise to say that they're not censoring and doing things, being rather selective and prejudiced and what have you. But anyway, enough of that for now. Like I said, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with that event that likely will transpire in Russia, where they unplug from the internet, from the World Wide Web, for maybe a half hour or so. And I believe, I will say this in closing on this subject, even Amos chapter 8, verse 11, which is a verse, especially I think if you're a Shepherd's Chapel student, you've probably had that, I don't want to say beaten into your head, but it's been referenced probably, and you can reference it probably many times, the famine of the end times, not for bread and water, but for hearing the Word of God, the true Word of God. And I think the internet will play a big part in that famine, especially when the Antichrist is here, especially when we have that tribulation, when we are in that tribulation period where certain websites, certain ministries, that certain shows that do teach the true Word of God, chapter by chapter and verse by verse in particular, you're probably going to have a hard time finding them, if you find them at all. So, definitely something to watch. Now, today's show, tonight's show, this morning's show, whenever you happen to catch it, what caught my interest, or what piqued my attention, I was able to do some show prep on this, because actually my job, what I actually make my living off of, Wednesday, well, there I gave it away. There I gave away the punchline. And here I'm trying to be all clandestine and cloak and dagger and secretive, and I can't keep a secret at all. It's kind of like Seinfeld, I put something in the vault and it just leaks out. It was just a waste of time to even put it in the vault. But anyway, what was I saying about Wednesday anyway? Wednesday is my early day. I get off work earlier than Wednesday and Saturday. Saturday I actually get off work at 2 o'clock Eastern Time. Wednesday I get off at 3 o'clock. The rest of the week it's usually usually around 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening actually. But so I had a little bit more time today. But earlier I saw this. And by the way, the topic for this show, the title for this show is America's Ticking Debt Bomb and America's Debt Bubble, or kind of a loose title. I'll give it an official title probably after the fact. But, so many people look at the economy and they just look at the surface things. They just look at what's the unemployment rate, what's our GDP, and they look at it, and it doesn't even have to be Trump, even though I am certainly no Trump believer or supporter. It can be any president. And they say, okay, what's the unemployment rate? What's the GDP? Okay, the president's doing a good job. Almost nobody in the general public, or too few people in the general public, actually pay attention